I just had to give you the right Discord permissions.
Oh, hey, Zertle.
What's up?
Standing in the rain.
All right, I think the only one missing is Men. So if everyone doesn't mind, in the Frap section, there's a video, the latest video. In fact, I can delete the other ones. We don't need them. That video there, if you can just watch the last 15 seconds, specifically looking at where the people in front of Quicken, the Black Lotus and Lineage guys, I think were the ones that were furthest out in front of the pack when the run-up was occurring. So just go ahead and watch the video and just take a look at exactly where they are when the FTE goes up. That's the only kind of background information that I think is necessary at this point. All right, so I'll go ahead and get started. On Sunday, there was a Lady Vox window that went pretty late. At the time Lady Vox spawned, there was about 170 people in zone that were trying to run up for Lady Vox. These were all people that were in the spirit of competition, trying to engage in a foot race, and in which case getting to Lady Vox's lair first by foot and tagging with the clicky or what have you would secure an FTE, which your guild could engage upon. So as far as I'm aware, every single guild had told their members and were under that impression that it's a foot race and we were racing up. Only one person actually had a chance at winning this FTE race, not the other 170 people. They were just there wasting their time, and that's because one member from Black Lotus, Fembot, used an unorthodox method to obtain the FTE, a method that basically didn't allow fair competition for the other 170 people. And this method is using lull to, when you're within range of the dragon, to use lull through a wall to be able to aggro that dragon. And I wanted to bring this situation to the UN Council. And basically there's 3 reasons why I think that this is an egregious infraction. I'm not searching for anything in particular. I just think that this infraction is egregious, and I'll explain why. And I think this will be more or less a case study of how we should discuss and potentially deal with egregious infractions in the future if the UN does agree with me that it's an egregious infraction. So to begin with, the first reason I think it's an egregious infraction is because it was using a mechanic that, and this is kind of one reason that is probably going to be thrown out, but in the history of Blue, anything that gives you an advantage, which is considered an unorthodox method to obtain an FTE, is generally ruled negatively upon by the community and by the GMs. In this case, doing something like lulling through a wall historically has been unallowed and not accepted by the community or the GMs as a fair way to obtain an FTE. So we had we had over 150 people that were in the spirit of good competition attempting to FTE this mob, including members of Lineage and Venerate, members of guilds that were allied with Black Lotus that had no clue that they were wasting their time because they did not have a fair shot at the competition. So even though there is no specific rule against using this tactic that we've come up with as a UN, I think that this is such a beyond a gray area where you're basically utilizing a specific tactic that is more or less in my eyes cheating. Like most of us in SEAL team know that you can do this and that you can use lulling to aggro dragons and such. But this is basically against the spirit of competition to act in such a way where you're basically cheating, in my opinion. So that's the first reason. The second reason I think it's an egregious infraction is because that there was recently a UN proposal, a policy which we unanimously passed, that the dragon must be engaged in the lair, and this is because of the buggy pathing of the dragon. That was something that was discussed last week by many people that were in this channel. That the pathing of the dragon is poor, so you must engage it in the lair. And based on the screenshot and the video posted when Black Lotus obtained the FTE on this dragon, they were not in the lair. No one was in the lair when this occurred, and specifically that buggy pathing prevented Lady Vox from actually exiting her lair, but also it was directly a violation of proposal policy 13. Policy 13 states Vox should be engaged in their lair. That's the first sentence of policy 13. And there were 0 people in Lady Vox's lair when she was engaged. And then finally, I think this is an egregious infraction because both of the first 2 parts I explained, the infraction itself led to an FTE, which was then engaged by the 3 guilds in an attempt to kill it. So it basically was using these tactics. It was then engaged, and they wiped, but they might not have wiped. And no other guild had a chance to engage this dragon in a fair, competitive manner because of the way that the FTE was obtained, using an unorthodox method, which basically had 165 people that did not use this tactic, basically just wasting their time sitting there. We weren't able to have a good, friendly competition because one person chose to do something that was unorthodox and against the spirit of a good competition. So at this point, I just want to open that's basically my piece and open it up to discussion.
Yeah. So package this with Kingdom. I have like to clear the air on, I guess, what rules are expected to be known versus unknown. I understand that rule is based on blue rules that were settled from 4 years ago. I'm kind of curious, is that something that for future guilds or us or Kingdom to basically look at the backlog of rule sets to make sure that we understand all the current rules as is? Midden, or we have discussed before, is green rules are being defined as this UN Council, or are we basically saying that the status quo of the rule sets are based on the blue rules and that transfers over to green?
Well, I think for this particular instance, even though it's something that's historically been frowned upon, I don't think that we should necessarily count, like, that shouldn't be taken into account. What should be taken into account is how blatantly.
Faith, the question, I hate to interrupt you, buddy, but the question was more to Midden because I would like to know that way we can do more research. The thing is that I think Mayu talked with Smash is that they're trying to come up with creative ways to do it. For Kingdom, we were looking to do the race you guys and unfairly, and fairly, and basically that we would not have thought of that process or tried to do that. I wasn't unaware of that rule set. So
Yeah, I guess that's true. A lot of us come from blue. I mean, that is something that has just been known for years on blue, that if you do that, you'll get a raid suspension. And in blue, that would result in all three of those guilds, because you are alive, getting a raid suspension. Now, given that, this isn't necessarily blue, but still that we had an agreement last week where we agreed, and the guilds involved in this race all agreed that they would engage in the lair. I mean, using this method, even if it wasn't known that it was something allowed, like Fate said, it's not in the spirit of fair competition, and it directly violates the agreement they made last week.
So we thought, I mean, our thinking was that as long as we don't pull her out of the lair, then, she's in the lair.
Well, she can't come out of the lair because of how she passed if you aggro and then run out.
Right.
I mean-
And so, and I only talked to Fembot about it like in the 5 minutes before the pop. But I told him, oh, well, it should be fine because as long as she doesn't leave the lair, and I told him, if she leaves the lair, we have to concede.
But there's 155 people that weren't able to compete because of that tactic that you used. Do you not see an issue with that?
I don't think that tactic should be allowed. I think it should be against the rules.
Then
We
why did you do it?
genuinely
It
didn't
should be
know
allowed.
that there was a rule about it.
I mean, why would you do something that you think is wrong to do? And,
It's
and
not
why
that we
would
thought
you
it was
tell
wrong.
your
We
guild
thought that it was
you didn't-
an overpowered thing to do.
well,
That's the way it always was on blue. You come up with something new, and then it's probably a problem. So you say you're not doing it anymore.
Right. Smash, can I ask you a quick question? Do you think it's fair if someone was fast enough or good enough to basically do the back route using the levy trick, going down that way and getting the FTE? Is that a creative way or an exploit?
It was creative until it was ruled against the rules, which happened a long time ago.
I wanted this. Oh, okay. So there's a rule against it. So that's another thing. I'm
On
hearing.
blue, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, these things that have been ruled in that obviously are glitches and things and exploitations. I mean, obviously we shouldn't use them, but given that there's past rulings on all of these things, I feel like we should abide by them, because obviously they're not in the spirit of fair competition. We all agreed to do a foot race, and that's what we were doing. And we also agreed to engage in the lair. Both of those things were violated this week.
I think, and I didn't play on blue, so a lot of these rules I'm unaware of or I don't know. I think what Pac was referring to, and correct me if I'm wrong, was with the video with Tapani leving up to go through the back entrance. So that she was originally trying to find the hole. Maybe she didn't find her, whatever. I mean, it's, I guess, not important to the fact, but would it have been okay if she leved into the hole to earn FTE that way?
I would not.
If it is against the rules of whatever Blue said.
I would not have condoned any of my guildmates to do either of those.
We've already told them not to do it.
We've made it clear all of these things can't be done. I mean, we're trying to, by the letter of the rule, do these things.
So you said the letter of the rule. The problem is I keep bringing that up, that we need to vote on a certain rule set, have that rule set defined out if possible.
Well, so maybe
it needs to be clear to see what they are, is what Pac's saying.
I mean,
yeah, maybe I'm late to this, but I was under the impression that all rules from blue are in effect until we overrule them by some executive decision. I thought we were told that explicitly by the GMs.
No, it's in, and I don't want to. Minton's in the room, but I don't want to quote him. But basically, it was my understanding that we didn't want to go down that path of having X amount of and have a giant rule book as Blue did. That we would try to come up with different ways of enjoying the content and find fair competition with the rule sets that we.
But you just fucked that up, dude. Because there's nothing fair about 158 people that can't compete for a mob.
That was
right?
Pacadus talking, buddy.
Oh, my bad. Well,
it's okay, man.
not you. I'm just that was just.
You really fucked that one up.
Yeah, I know. But
consider yourself significantly chewed out for the next time.
Yeah, no shit, right? No, I think Legendary and I are in a really tight, hard spot because Legendary and I are basically representing our large guilds, right? And both of us are both greenhorns on green because we came to this experience for different reasons, and I guess people transitioning from blue. And I understand that, and I respect that. But we're coming from a different group of players of the player base that came for different reasons to green, and so that's why it's hard for us to understand that a rule that was based in the forums 4 years ago. And I understand that. That's what I'm trying to understand. Like how can we know all this going in and basically compete fairly because we want to compete fairly, right? Like
you can't. That's really it. You can't because you don't know the blue rule set, and that's kind of an issue. But I get tells, and Landris and Gallic get tells on what are the rules, and we have no problem clarifying. We prefer to do it in a public forum, unlike the petitions exploits forum. So if you ever have a question, ask.
Thank you. That's perfect.
To kind of go on that, weren't there a lot weren't the dragons rooted, so a lot of like the rules regarding FTE and racing, and this is just from what someone told me because I don't have any knowledge, did change
in North TOV.
I see. Okay.
Yeah, the dragons were rooted because we were overrun with petitions, raid violations, and we got tired of it. And that was Rogan's. Rogan did that on his own. We didn't know he was going to do that, but it solved a problem. And it wasn't the classic experience back in whenever Vilius was that gap of time to train the zone. That was not a thing. So he kind of fixed it.
So I just want to go back to like I think we should definitely vote on bringing in at least just the basic outline of Blue's rules that are explained on the forums. It's just 2 pages on the forums of 25 rules. We can vote on having those as our basic code of conduct. But this particular issue, I want to just ignore the fact that it's illegal to do lulling on Blue. And just search in your mind when Moy, you said that it shouldn't be used as a tactic, and this is why it's a case study. We have a tactic that you agree is probably not the fair tactic to do, right? It can be agreed that it put Fembot at an unfair advantage to get that FTE. So why did you do it? If we can figure out a way to work together as guilds and not have to deal with people trying to encroach on the gray area, it's going to be a lot healthier. The reason I'm really upset by it is because it's a gray area, and it's a gray area, and you said, well, as long as it doesn't leave the layer, then it should be fine. But that's so gray, it's so risky, it's so marginal. Why would you like? I just don't understand. Like that part's a gray area for sure. And then,
so we weren't even sure that she'd be in range. Like I would have guessed she wasn't. I mean, I guess she is. Like if I was going to put $1 down, I would have said it probably wasn't going to reach.
Maybe
you sit in the Goblin King.
Yeah, maybe Fembot
you can look through the wall and see. I mean, you can. I thought that was common knowledge.
I don't know. When I try to look through as an ogre, it's like hard as shit, and it seems far away.
My point is that whether it works or whether it doesn't work, why would you even suggest doing it if it's something that is such a gray area and is gonna potentially not be kosher?
We thought we'd try it. I don't know.
I mean, we got the kill, right? At the end of the day, we got the kill, and the only reason this sits so poorly with me is because I feel bad for the 160 people there that were literally waiting to run up, and it was all in vain. And those are some of those people were in Black Lotus. If you look at the video, the 2 people in front were in Black Lotus or Lineage. You guys would have gotten the FTE anyway, and you would have gotten it fairly. We wouldn't have 20 people sitting in a room here having to discuss this.
I mean, at a bare minimum, it sounds like we can all agree and write up a green rule to not use that kind of strategy in the. And we came up with a rules because we didn't have anything by at least explicitly outlined as far as what to do if the dragon's dragged out of the lair on a wipe. There is precedent for that. I've posted it in the UN with 2 answers to questions from the GMs that make it clear that once there's a complete wipe and the target starts to path back, people can engage and get a fresh FTE and engage. And so that's what we did, and we got the kill. But now if we can just get explicit language and just
I
move
would definitely
forward every
like
week.
Smash. I know you and I went hard at it, but I definitely would like explicit language and to kind of dictate that out because literally when we knew that they were going to wipe, we cleared our aggro, and then we basically, because of confusion and hesitation based on the rule, we didn't really bring it to the zone line. We didn't try to engage. We didn't try to kill the dragon and so on. So it's basically, while you guys are upset about not having the opportunity to compete because of what Fembot did, I'm frustrated because I feel like we don't have a chance to compete because we are trying to define what Rule 13 meant and so on. And I know that there's somehow you guys heard that we are trying to engage while they were kind of wiping or engage. The fact was that we had an SK that was down that wanted to pull it into the lair, and we are going to bring it into the lair. So you did not have all the details when that statement was made, but it's fine. But I definitely agree with you, buddy. I definitely think if we can define that better, that we can avoid this kind of frustration in the future.
Yeah, it sounds like this is a process. A lot of people aren't on blue, but I would like to know from Mendon, at least in those explicit rules that are outlined as far as how things like camps work and FTEs works and engages, and some of those things that I quoted in here in relation to this, are those precedent, and then the rules we set then amend that, or are those not precedent and we're setting up all new rules? It's a direct question for Mendon if you happen to hear.
Think he may be idle. He's got that little moon.
Okay.
Well,
Yeah,
if
he's
not here. I'll say what we can do is we can make a proposal to use the the blue rules written out in the post by Sirkin, the main post, just those rules, the ones that are actually written out, and use
Yeah, the raid rules FAQ.
Yeah, use those as a guideline for a code of conduct for rating, and just have those be kind of the standard, and then we can add stuff and subtract stuff that we have in our own proposals area, but at least then there's 25 rules written out that people can reference.
Yeah.
And
So like if I had any idea that
hold on. Mendon was trying to talk.
You'll get Gap. I'm listening the whole time. I'm hauling firewood, so just give me a minute if you ask me a question so I can put everything down.
Sure, buddy.
But yeah. So the question was, should we follow those rules? I would use blue rules as a guideline and then pick and choose the little pieces that make sense. Like I talked to a couple of the core members of this group before, I really don't want to see the entirety of blue rules implemented because it's a fucking mess. It's hard to understand when you're new to the game, right? So take some of that stuff, especially IC lulling in rating, not a great thing. That should definitely be in there, and any other little things that are creates an unfair advantage, or if everyone did something like that, what would happen? It's just not in the spirit of EverQuest, classic EverQuest.
So I think I kind of answers right there. Smash is basically we can find the things that heuristically that works pretty well, and then we can come with rules ourselves that can be applied.
Sounds good to me. And so I realize every week it's going to be a work in progress, and we're likely going to discover new things and work on it. What I'd like to get is a commitment from everybody to try to avoid things that you believe are in gray areas and not in the spirit of competition. And let's try to talk ahead of time if there's questions that we can discuss and come up with a consensus. And I just look forward to healthy competition in the future. But yeah, there's 2 things out of that Vox encounter that we need to make explicit. And that involves making sure those strategies, like trying to pull something through a wall whenever you're not actually in range and in front of it, is not allowed. And then rules for engagement whenever something is dropped and wiped away from their lair. At least we'll cover the.
And there's several things that fall under that umbrella of unorthodox methods. You know, lull pulling, shadow stepping, res boxes, gating, using the helm of Ryle from Vishan's Peak to increase your stamina, jumping and lowering your frame rate. These are all unorthodox methods to help you obtain an FTE. Things that give you an unfair advantage over the competition.
Yeah, if it feels like it's something that would give you an unfair advantage, it's probably something we don't want to have people.
Everybody back to 56K modems.
That's it.
And
Nobody's allowed to have more than a 4 meg video card, right?
Good, I quit. That's the line right there.
And I know with my tone, it seems like I'm out for blood against you guys, Lotus, but that's not why I wanted to do this. I wanted to do this to prevent, so that in the future we don't have to do this, and in the future that like everyone can be happy with the results of a repop as far as thinking they had a fair shot at the mobs. And I personally, when I saw that video, I felt bad for Quicken, right? Like he was up there, he had a good shot at getting the FTE. I felt bad for, I forget which lineage dude was up there. You know, they were sitting there waiting, and they got the jump. Fucking all the knuckleheads in front of that gate had a chance at getting the FTE until it was lulled.
Well, it's pretty epic how long the gate stayed shut, though.
Yeah, I watched that. It was pretty funny.
So, are we moving on to other conversation points, or are we? You know, one of the things that I think the first competitive raid that Kingdom had against Black Lotus and SEAL Team, at that time we talked about different ideas using third parties to come up with recommendations and so on, but we never put anything into gospel to say. So are we going to do that? I know
I would like, because I still think even though the lulling itself was a gray area, the first to engage being the keyword, which was proposal 13, was done by somebody that was not in the layer. And I don't think that's a gray area. I think that's pretty black and white. You must engage Vox in their layer, and Fembot was the first to engage FTE message, and Fembot was not in the layer. So I think I think that is not a gray area. So I think we should come up with some precedent on what occurs when an infraction on the rule set that we've set is made, whether it be a warning or whether it be I don't know what it is, but I think exactly where you're getting to, Pac, is we need to come up with some system of how we handle.
And I feel us as SEAL Team are kind of bringing up this issue, and we posted the videos, and it kind of caught us off guard because at first we were congratulating you guys on getting the first FTE, and then we looked through our videos and realized, and then we had some of our FTE runners saying it was FTE'd before anybody was near the lair. So we start checking our videos and we saw what happened. So I don't think, since we're bringing up this issue, that we want to necessarily propose what should be done about it, but I'd like to hear from the community what you think.
And I know that maybe you guys are looking for an answer from us, but what is it that you would expect from the situation at this point, so we can kind of piggyback off that or create some of our own ideas based on what your guys' thought process was. I mean, just initially for presenting it.
Maybe like a 1, 2, 3 type of strike system if a guild violates the policies that are presented, something like that, like an egregious violation, or even a voting system to determine if it's an egregious violation, if it warrants a warning, like a proper warning. I don't know. I think that we need to just come up with a system in general for when like a major violation occurs. Come up with a system of determining if something is worthy of it being a major violation, and then come up with maybe like some way to communicate the repercussions. I mean, like so far we've been really good at just like helping each other realize what's going wrong and stuff. But at some point, that especially if it's repeat offenders, like that won't be enough. And then what do we do in those cases?
So maybe like a write-up system as you would get in work, to where it would be a verbal, written kind of, then the final thing. But you know, in what time frame does that consist of, and then what is the final outcome? I would hate to see a guild completely taken out of any kind of you know, rating possibilities, because they had 3 separate occasions from 3 members who, you know, who knows, maybe one of them could have done it intentionally, and then to have to ultimately, you know, long term suffer the consequences. So to think maybe how something you know, something harsh in a way could be implemented, but it wouldn't affect, you know, long term, to be
Yeah,
completely out.
I'll
think
give you. Go ahead.
I think that the best policy in general is that you do something wrong, you pay then. And so like that's what the server GMs do, is, you know, if you commit a foul, you get a penalty, and then your next foul is more severe. And I think
Personally,
that makes more
hate-
sense than trying to accrue a certain amount of guilt or something like that. Just, I think that's just gonna get sticky.
Personally, I hate the 7-10 day raid suspension system that was on Blue, because you're punishing. I think you're punishing over the top to tell people, hey, you can't play the game for a week. It's like, well, I don't know. I don't think I personally I don't want to see anything like that. But I do.
I think that there should be a point at which a 7-day suspension could be on the table. I mean, I don't know where that would be, but
Hey, my Nuggies trying to talk.
Yeah, so like the severity of that is supposed to keep you in line, right? Like that's so severe that it should keep anyone deterred from breaking the rules.
Stu, you had something to say?
Oh, I was saying, concedes, man. Those are always a good way to, you know, admit, all right, I fucked up, or concede in the next couple mobs.
I am very for self-selection on this. If you know there is something bad that people can't agree on, like say, you know, in this instance, you know, Black Lotus tried something and we think it's egregious, but maybe they don't think it's egregious, you know, and they don't want to self-select. There ought to be some kind of supermajority vote or something to correct them or get them back on the path that everyone else thinks is right.
Yeah, it's agreeable.
So Fates at Tukeville, I'm gonna pop over to our Discord because we have that raid starting at 10 and see if I can get it going while you guys finish up this conversation. Thanks for listening to us, guys. We appreciate you.
Thanks, Smash.
So are we saying that for grievous actions, that we're going to take a vote whether it is or not, and then use a supermajority to say if it is, and if it is, then we need to come up with a policy for corrective actions, and depending on how many times that has happened. So I guess number one is that as a group, are we saying that as a group, as we vote for something, that is enforced? So are we going, Nuggie, were you saying that as like a supermajority to classify an action or not?
Yeah, you know, whatever suspension system, you know, for lack of a better term, we end up with, I think it should be a supermajority vote, not just like a simple majority vote.
Right. So
if self-selecting isn't an option.
Okay. So, Fates, maybe we should put a proposal for once we review the content, and as a group, that supermajority vote is required to say an offense or a strike, whatever you want to call it, and then we'll have a different policies, or excuse me, corrective action steps for strike 1 or strike 2 or so on that we can use as an enforcement.
I think that's pretty reasonable, and we can have some sort of decay, right? Like,
right.
I think the first major infraction personally should just be like a stern warning, right? You've moved to where the next one there'll be some sort of type of situation, and then maybe have a decay like every couple months. You can get your warning back if like of good behavior. Something, I don't know. Maybe this is the type of thing that we don't need to decide right now too.
Well, so there's a couple things. One is that as a group, if we're saying that if the majority of us is saying right now a super majority, because my biggest pet peeve in the world is get a group of people in a meeting like this and we're dancing around the conversation without coming out to some resolution or action items. So basically, I'm saying right now, does anyone would like to vote no, requiring a super majority is needed to classify something as an offense? Let's just call it that. Does anyone is against that?
What's the ratio to supermajority?
So right now, it's a good question. So I believe it's
I'd say a
5 out of
2/3.
7, huh?
Two-thirds would be supermajority.
Right, 2/3.
And that's without a vote for the guild at question or the group at question, correct?
Yeah,
So
that would make the most
be
sense.
4-2. It would be 4-2.
Well, we have 7 now, right?
Right, but the guild.
Yeah, but the guild in question doesn't vote on their own innocence or guilt.
Okay, got it. Thanks.
Okay, well then that's something we can propose. And does anyone have any other concerns with that? Okay, well then we can move on to other topics. I
got one quick question. So I don't know. Do we want to talk more about the things that happened at Vox, or don't we? So like there's definitely Rule 10 violations. Sure. I don't know if it's even worth talking about it or what.
I don't think it's worth talking about.
If you think it's an egregious violation, then feel free to bring it. No one.
Well,
no
I mean, so
I will tell you with regards to Rule 10 that I know every major guild that was there told their members to come back to the double doors, and some individual members might have gotten lost or might have not been in voice listening or might just be stupid. But I know that the leadership from the other entities did instruct their guilds to do it.
Right. So I'd like to talk about 10 just a little bit, even in a totally non-punitive way, because like the whole point of Rule 10 is so that you can't have these trains of unknown origin, and like it's entirely likely that a Rule 10 violation is why Vox ended up at the zone line. We don't know that. That's the whole reason we have Rule 10, is so that it hopefully won't, right? So I mean, I'd be happy to drop Rule 10 questions for this particular engage, but I think that a Rule 10 violation needs to have a penalty, because, or at the very least, any Rule 10 violating guild loses any opportunity to claim like that they were trained by any of these nebulous trains, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, you guys had somebody in King Room that had social on literally everything, right? Fembot was in the King Room, and everyone in the King Room who did any action on Fembot is then going to social the.
I suppose that's possible. Fembot definitely ran straight up and was, like up at the rock pretty immediately within, I would say, probably 15 seconds. But yeah, I that's possible.
I mean, it's difficult. You're right. Like Rule 10's there for a reason, but also, I mean, if there's 170 people there from multiple guilds, and you got a new recruit from your guild that gets lost on the way back down, like that's gonna happen. Maybe not every week, but
right. But there should be some guideline for how it can be applied. Otherwise, it just kind of doesn't matter, right?
Or falls in the pit, and maybe they run out of the pit, and maybe they take all the pit with them somewhere.
Yeah, or whatever.
Yeah, I don't know how to. Sure, you could come up with some ideas for it.
We could just spitball it and bring it to the next meeting, I guess, probably.
So, I mean, I would think we already just talked about a method of repercussions. I mean, if we have policies, all the policies should have repercussions. So if we already voted on one thing that would have a repercussion, all of these would have a repercussion.
But I think Fates is pointing out that this is one that gets broken. Like it's there for a reason and it's important, but it also is easy for somebody to break it on accident. So I don't know if it's ultra egregious, and it's hard to assign causality.
That's why it takes a supermajority to vote on it, and so that's why,
Okay, so it'll just be a judgment call. case by case for that supermajority?
I think so,
Right,
because like the reason I picked your case in particular is because that was a call by the leadership to that it's okay for you to do this, right? It's something your guild sanctioned, and it led to an FTE. Somebody getting lost on the way back from Double Doors is not something that a guild is sanctioning, and while it may lead to a train, and the reason we don't want it to happen is to avoid that. Like in this particular case, like I don't see it being egregious. Now, if you get a fraps of one of our knuckleheads training Pit onto your active engage, that's egregious in my opinion. But somebody who's just like standing up there like, oh fuck, I don't know where everyone went. I'm confused. I'm a noob. Like first of all, I want to know who they are so I can chew them out. But so I would still appreciate you telling me who they are because I haven't gotten their names yet. But or the video.
I can DM them to you.
Yeah, because I would like to chew them out and say, what the fuck were you doing? But at the same time, like I think they're two different. That one of them is egregious, one of them is not egregious, in my opinion, right? I don't know what the opinion of the other guilds are.
And I don't personally, I wasn't looking for this, but I had multiple people tell me that multiple guilds violated 9 also and were running up with pets. So I mean, just for everyone to make sure you're addressing it with your people for sure.
And do violations, if it's a guild versus a guild in different violations, do they cancel each other or do they stack separately?
I think that would end up being one of those supermajority questions, I guess. Because it's just such a judgment area. I mean, how are you going to say what equals what? You'd have to... Yeah.
I mean,
There's just so much going on with 200 people, and I'm assuming, I'm not saying that, there's none of my guys that had any fault. I don't know who had pets up or who, whatever the situation may be, but to kind of stack up how those violations would work out.
Yeah, okay. I think that's all good. I'm happy with that.
Just to go revisit PAX thing before, maybe we can, and I don't personally, I don't have time to do it tonight, but maybe we can sit down with the blue rules, the 25 rules, with one representative from each guild and pick the ones that we want to propose to bring on to this. Maybe we can do that another night. And then we have at least some more structure and some more guidelines to kind of follow.
Well, I think we are.
Oh, sorry, Fates. Maybe what we can do is we can put them on a shareable spreadsheet, and just list them all out, and then just put an X. You can do it at your own leisure. Maybe have it due by next week, but just put an X if you vote in favor of, and have the guilds listed out, just as an idea, so we're not in the same room discussing rule by rule. I mean, I'm okay with that too, but
I like that idea. Can you take point on that, create the document, and share it with everyone in the UN?
Sure.
I think it's also that since we have the supermajority, like it's a good catch-all in case there's something that's vague.
Just kind of thinking about the warnings, and I'm going to go ahead and say that I don't want to propose for Black Lotus's infraction to be taken. I think I don't want to pursue the Black Lotus thing any further. I think that it's just we use it as a case study to come up with what happens in the future, and I also use it as a plea to you guys to not do anything that you would consider a gray area or marginal, so that we can minimize the number of infractions. But I do propose the 3-strike rule with 2 months to forgive a strike, and then the 3 strikes being 1, a warning, 2, the concession of the specific target twice, and then the third one to be one cycle off of raid targets, 1 cycle of raid targets off. I don't know. I open the floor to discussion on those 3 strikes.
Well, I think if you that's great. It's a great outline. I think if you put it in the policy for vote, I think it will go through the process, right? So
Does anyone have anything else they'd like to discuss?
I have one minor nitpick, but it's mostly with mining. So when we're inside of windows for giants, I'd rather that other guilds weren't in that giant area for fire giants. That's about all.
Wait, sorry, what'd you say?
So when we're inside our windows for fire giants, I had today a few Black Lotus people run up into the fire giants and start killing a giant. They got one down, but if we're on, it's our time for fire giants. I'd rather not have other guilds like in there poaching fire giants. It's uncomfortable.
Okay.
Like, are they going to go snipe Tranix now? What's next? I don't know.
Yeah. So I can speak to that. So I had one of our members come to me and say, hey, I noticed that sometimes some of the dragons some of the fire giants are left up, and I said, well, as long as there's nobody else there and they're just left there, I don't think anybody's going to care. He was specifically talking about the two back by Stone Spider and then the Scarlan Guard, because a lot of them get left up. And I told him, I don't think anybody's going to care. I did tell him if like somebody else is there to talk to him, so I will. Is that okay? If that's what they do, they check. Hey, is it okay if I kill the one that's not there? I did make it clear that they can't touch any named giant under any circumstances.
I mean, honestly, I don't care. It was just uncomfortable, and I felt like we needed to potentially move our guild up in order to ensure that like nobody's going to mess with something.
I mean, if it would make everybody happier, I'll just tell our people just stay completely out. That's fine. It's not a problem. I don't mind.
Yeah, that's what I tell people.
Yeah, I'll do that. It's no problem.
There
Consider
is
it done.
something to be said though for keeping a presence in Tranix room. Like, I know, like before Fear came out, I left my Necro there 24/7 so that we had a claim as a consortium of guilds for the. So I think that's still okay, right? For us to, as a group of 7 guilds, always have somebody FD'd under Tranix.
I think that's not a bad plan. Yeah.
Do we know what the status of that petition was, though? Because I know that day Gallic showed up, and that I guess the farm group had cleared some of the giants up to, and that when there was no response from the AFKer, so I didn't hear anything after they had petition on Venerate. I think Gallic told them to leave and to go under a guild tag. So, but I don't know what the ultimate outcome was, if it's okay to do that, or and do we observe, do we claim that right with someone there AFK?
No, I haven't had a chance to deal with those petitions, but I don't know what to tell you. I've been too busy to deal with it.
Okay.
But
I think and Men, you might be able to comment on this too, but as long as you keep somebody on Tranix spawn and keep all fire giants in line of sight of Tranix down, there should be no issues. Is that correct?
yeah, I mean, fire giants classically was always a camp. It was never a raid target, but because of the lack of targets on the server right now, it's they're not even raid targets, right? So yeah, you can camp them, but you must be in the area, LOS, AFK, not AFK, but aggro range of what you're camping.
So in order to claim Magi, Tranix, and Scarlorn, you would need 3 monks or whatever FD'd on there. So by leaving somebody at Tranix, we're really only claiming Tranix.
Yeah, I mean, the rules, when Landers became GM, we clarified the rules, and they're pretty clear on dungeon type zones. There's a couple little exceptions, but I would say that should stay clear for Magi and Giants and all that stuff. I mean, if someone wants to AFK down by the 2 giants in the entrance there, they can claim them. Just kill them within a reasonable amount of time. I'm not really going to put a number on it, but a reasonable amount. Have your guys there before they spawn is what I would say.
So we should full clear all giants every time we do giants for safety?
I would, if I were you. But as I said, it's in the LOS aggro range of the giants you want to claim.
Yeah.
Um,
Okay. So we're okay to leave those two up by Stone Spider.
Totally. I'm just using that as an example. It's further down, so to claim those, you got to be, basically sitting between.
Roger. Does anyone else have any stuff they want to bring up? I'm going to write up the proposals of what we discussed for the judiciary system, I guess. And Legendary Monk is going to create a document that summarizes all the rules on blue, and we can individually go through one vote per guild or whatever and decide which ones that we think we should bring to green. And then maybe we can meet in a week after the next cycle and just have a short meeting to enact all those new rules.
Okay. So I was actually waiting for Nuki to present this because we had an agreement that we would like a mediator to present what we're going to drop into the general. It's a proposal from the guilds from the UN on creating a more healthier and more in the spirit of both content and for EverQuest enjoyment. So we basically came and discussed rules that we are proposing that we are going to vote for in favor of competitive rating, but also rotational content for everyone to enjoy. So I'm putting it in the journal for everyone to.
Yeah. So take some time, look it over, chew it up, digest it, and let us know what you guys want to tweak.
Which thing are we looking at here? I'm sorry, I missed it.
Charter of the P99 Green server guilds that was just linked in the general chat.
I see it now.
I can already make this comment, and this is something I've promised my guild. Any rotation of 7-day spawns will SEAL team would not vote in favor of, and if this were something that is enacted by the UN, we would leave the UN. That is something that I cannot ever that I'll have to do everything in my power to stay away from is rotation of 7-day.
Okay. Yeah, I was expecting that. And so, are you saying that Vox and Ogafin are going to be that way for forever, or is there like some time frame that you'd be more comfortable with?
If they respawn them daily.
Well, I mean, so specifically, let's look at Lord Nagafin. Lord Nagafin drops a blade stopper. Every good puller, every good tank needs a blade stopper. So it's never trivial content, and so I can never, I could never, like in good conscience, agree to rotate and tell my guys. The problem is I have a problem telling my guys, hey, just this week you're not allowed to kill this raid target that you want to go kill. That's not fair to my guys. So that's kind of my hard stance on that. There are some dragons I would be willing to rotate for sure, like Vox eventually, and like Talendor, and even like Sev and stuff, further down the road. But some things like Trachanon, I would never be in favor of rotating Trachanon because it drops VP keys, things like this. So I'm open to discussion on some dragons, but something like this, a blanket statement of all dragons. SEAL team it's just I told my guildmates that I will never vote in favor of it, and if something like that were to be enforced by the UN, then we would leave the UN.
So, what is the outcome player agreement then?
You broke up there.
My question was, what is the, I guess, either the agreement, the outcome of player agreements? What is the point of player agreement health?
Also, I think
No,
at a certain
but
point, Men didn't open his mic. I don't know if he had something to say.
I was laughing at the comment about making dragons a everyday spawn.
Ah,
Pretty funny.
That's a great idea.
Thank you. Thank you.
So I guess, to chime in here, we want to try to we created this to come together to try to create rules or implementations that either are short term or long term. And there are some rules that we agree with or we don't agree with that we move forward with because it's kind of the commitment that we made. And I'm not saying that because you saying if you won't agree with it and to ultimately leave the UN, but I guess what does that mean? What does that look like? Is there any medium, any solution that we can even discuss?
I was kind of hoping from this agreement was getting more back to the late Kunark CCR system, and it's not quite tuned to that, but I think it's not too far away that we can't tweak it in some agreeable way.
I'm in favor. I'm more than willing to do something where it's like an open raid, and the entire server can come kill the content. But that's inclusive of my guys, right? I would be willing to have multiple open raids a month where everyone comes together and kills it. But I'm personally just not in favor of saying, hey, you guys can't go kill these things you want to kill this week.
So as long
I'm
as
in favor of inclusion, but I'm not in favor of exclusion. And
Wait
right
a
now,
minute. Go ahead. You're gonna say something, Ben?
yeah, so as long as your players, your guild mates have a chance at something, even though it's a small chance, you're
Exactly. I mean, and we can play the game. I mean, every week we want to kill something. There's only so many targets to kill, and we want to play the game. We don't want to sit out and be on the sideline and let some other guild have a shot at it just because we agreed to not play the game.
can I ask one quick favor? I don't actually know who Vil is, and I probably should, but who are you?
he's the officer.
I'm Phil.
Sorry, I missed that.
I'm an officer of SEAL team.
Okay, cool. You're not labeled, so.
Oh, okay, sorry.
Okay, so if you guys remember the CCR days, it was very rare when any guild didn't have something to camp out for or something to look forward to. There were so many mobs in Kunark that there was always something to do. I don't know that you're ever going to have the problem of, well, this week you're not going to have anything to do at all.
Isn't that when the earthquakes got implemented as well to make the pie bigger?
But that was also brought forward due to an extremely toxic raid scene. And I mean, personally, I don't think this is toxic right now. I mean, it's
So
we're all sitting
Faith,
in the channel.
man, I'm telling you this as a friend. This is really hard for you to come to. You want to beat, but things are not going good.
You're breaking out.
Yeah, your mic's
You're
totally
breaking up a
fucked
lot.
back.
Yeah, I said that the room right now and where things are going are not. So we have to come up with better solutions.
And I guess to piggyback. Oh, go ahead, Shaughnessy first. Go ahead.
I guess my thing is just listening to this and talking. You guys talking about it. So if we just don't like something, we just say screw the UN and we're gone. Because that's what we're getting. That's what I was hearing when the leader of SEAL team said, "I will never agree with this. We'll just up and leave." So I mean, like you said, there's stuff that everybody doesn't like. Eventually, I don't like that comment.
But I don't like this enough that it would destroy our pact to the UN because it's a promise I've made. I've made this promise to my guild. I told them this, that I would never vote in favor or stand for something that causes the rotation of 7-day dragons. So it's me holding my word up to my guild. That is, and I'm sorry that it feels like I'm being that I'm being like not open to the idea. I've already made a promise to my constituents that I would not tolerate or vote in favor of that type of idea because it does not serve our best interest in a way that is it's an exclusive thing. When you do rotations, you're saying these guilds cannot compete or attempt to kill these targets on these dates, and I'm not in favor of anything that's exclusive to any.
In Fates, I think me and you have pretty good relationship and communication. I guess I'm just trying to see. I know your raid mentality. I know the goals of SEAL Team. Like I understand them. I'm not on the same page, of course, because my approach is more casual. I guess at the end of the day, like if it was just SEAL Team on the server, like everyone just left, is that is that what you guys would be okay with? And yes or no, I'm fine either way. Because I get mixed things. Like we are trying to promote a certain type of environment or a certain type of gameplay, not to take anything because you guys are hardcore. You guys have all your ducks in a row. Like you guys do everything you need to do. And I don't know. Like I'm at a point now where I try to do everything that I can for my guild, and I do spend a lot of time in the game. Like I try to give it everything to where it may cost me and others in other aspects of time that I spend at home or time with my girlfriend. But at some point, like either the guys are going to start leaving, I'm going to start leaving, like to where I'm not sure what to do. Like so I don't know if it's your guys's, if it's the goal and you guys are okay with kind of just pushing people out solely. I don't know. I don't see any other path to it other than that.
I'm not sure what you mean pushing you out slowly. I mean there's 2 dragons that spawn now. There's 4 that spawn once a week. That means there's been like less than 20 raid targets since the inception of the server. There's not much content out there. So there's 40 people in my guild that have listed AON, either the highest or the second highest priority item that they want. That's over 2 years of Kazakh Thuls for people in my guild alone to be able to get an item that they want as the highest priority. The one item they picked is the highest priority. So, I mean, it's just the nature of the game. Loot is extremely scarce in this game. There's only 8 to 10 items a week that drop, and there's thousands of people playing it. I've gotten 0 dragon pieces, and I'm the guild leader of SEAL Team. So if people want to quit because they're not getting dragon loot, this is the wrong game for them. I remember in 2001 in halls of testing, I would show up to raid and people, the expectation was you weren't getting any yet.
I don't think it's the getting the loot or even getting the fight. It's the fact of the Roman debates that we're having every week. I didn't sign up for the come back from the 20-year experience of nostalgia to say I want to do my real life job and have a secondary job of litigation and lawyering and everything else. It's getting bad. Like I feel like here's the thing is I feel things could get better once we had those rules defined. I think there's a path forward, but I definitely think there needs to become with a way that is basically in good spirit of both keeping things competitive, but at the same time finding outlets for things for other guilds who are smaller in nature to enjoy the content.
If I might speak up here, before I joined SEAL Team, one of the things that attracted me to it, I felt, was its potential for fostering a friendly environment, not just a competitive environment, but a friendly one that's inclusive. One of the things that Fates has been insistent on, at least before the merger, was hosting periodic open raids so that everyone on the server can have access to content and enjoy things that maybe a casual player who only plays once or 2 or 3 hours a week usually doesn't get to see. And since the merger, it's been definitely more difficult due to the population constraints.
Yeah, I totally understand.
We're not trying to block people from accessing content. That's not our objective, our goal here. And we would very much like to be in a position where everyone can actually experience these things.
But going on an open raid is not the same as killing it yourself. We can all agree that, right?
But if you kill it yourself with your one guild and no one else can be there, you're saying that everyone else on the server doesn't have access to that content.
So I'm going to point
That's
out
what
one
you're
thing. Whoa, hold on. I'm going to point out one thing that 2 guilds here are very different from all the rest. Because there were 2 guilds that formed, fairly large guilds on their respective servers, right? And Kingdom and SEAL Team both had the luxury, the opportunity to be first and go and do exactly that. You got to practice all by yourself a whole bunch of time, right? I mean, I'm not saying that you shouldn't have gotten to. That's fine. But that's very different from everybody else's experience where we have to try and teach our people the encounter while racing like humongous raids of people. And I mean, you're gonna do what you do, play your game your way, but I'm curious if there's a point at which SEAL Team's ever big enough. I know you got a lot of people and they all want loot, and that's cool, but like at a certain point you've got so many hundreds of people, you sort of do end up monopolizing the content because some people don't want to be in a guild of 400 people.
Well, right now we have closed recruitment, and our raid size is generally no larger than 6, which is huge. But at the same time, your raid force yesterday and Kingdom's raid force yesterday was smaller than ours. Between the 3 guilds and between Kingdom's guild, we were the small guys. We were the smallest force that or Sunday. We were the smallest force to compete on Sunday.
And I'll say, aside from killing dragons and killing Vox and killing Nagathid, we trained for these events since the inception of our guild. This was things that we've trained for, and not all of our players are experienced as me and Fates and some of our others. They've come from all different backgrounds, and we're there to teach them. We incorporate them into our system. This isn't just like a bunch of people that have done this for 20 years and are trying to do it again and try to block people out. We're not the people that must have everyone else fail in order for us to succeed. That's not our goal here.
I mean, when we were alone, we kill Nagy. That's easy. Okay, well, can we do Nagy with 5 giants up? Can we do Nagy with 7? Can we do Nagy with 10 giants at the same time? I mean, even without competition, we created competition for ourselves because that's the type of player that we've.
I guess what I was saying has nothing to do with really what you were saying. What I was saying is we come together as a UN and a group, and we make choices and we vote and stuff. And there's stuff other people don't like, but nobody's saying we're leaving the UN because we don't like it. We're trying to work it out, and that's what I didn't like. I understand what you're saying, and I understand what you said. I'm just saying I don't like the fact that immediately with reading it, you're like, we're leaving, and we don't like it if it's a pass.
Yeah,
that's the way I got it from you, from hearing you, from what you said.
I kind of feel like you're more or less pushing us to merge into a bigger guild to kind of compete with you guys on a higher level.
I could address that too. I don't think that a larger size force is going to make you any better. No disrespect or anything, but I don't think it's going to improve your chances of trying to do what you're trying to do.
It absolutely does. I mean, it's not the end all be all, but it makes a huge difference.
I mean, we're trying to get more people to experience the content, and the only other way to do that would be to merge more of these smaller guilds to form a bigger guild, so more of us can experience content.
Right now, there's no one in permafrost training, right? There's no one there training on the encounters, the pathing, all the things that you could be learning right now are available in permafrost today, except for the one thing that's slightly different, which is the existence of that dragon. But everything other part of that encounter, you could be learning things, you could be training there.
But
I mean,
don't all guilds do that?
We do. We do as well, and that's a fair statement to make. At the same time, it's more about how each weekend has gone. It's more by the byproduct of each weekend has gone, and kind of the spirit of competition and so on. Like I said yesterday, with Smash, that we assume different things because we're assuming that we're going to play the game with respect, and when you guys accuse us for pulling the dragon over your raid force, and that was unintentional. At the same time, that happened again yesterday, right?
Yeah.
And we're not asking for concessions. We're not doing anything else. But I got a group of guys who are asking what's going on. These guys are clearly breaking the rules that you guys come with as a group. Number 13. What the fuck is going on? And I don't have any answers saying, oh, they secure the loot and we have to prove that they did something wrong. Like you guys are making it difficult extremely every week. And I would. Another thing is, did you guys even read it? The thing, because here's the thing is, Kingdom's still showing up to play ball. We ain't backing down. That's for damn sure. So expect us to be there. The thing is that I'm trying to come up with a way for all these other guilds, okay? And some of them we have bad blood with. And the fact that we come to an agreement on this is amazing. That to try to get everyone to have fun and play the game fairly.
I read the first line that said content after 60 days becomes rotated.
Another thing is, Fates, is if you keep reading down, and CI has a lawyer that basically said, we want to make sure this is a living document. So we can vote things down. We can change this. We don't need to say that this is the way, right? But at least we need to say, can we do better?
It's a draft.
Right.
I have to go lead a raid, and so I'm gonna just I'll take a look at it more and think about it over the next week. But my commitment to my guild is and the words I said to them, I'm gonna hold true to, because it would be unfair to them if I didn't. But what I will definitely vote in favor of, and I would be happy to do, and be happy to let any guild host it, are more open raids for the entire server. Something that's inclusive versus something that's exclusive. I'm not in favor of anything that is telling people they can't play the game and have fun and kill the content. I am in favor of large raids with 200 plus people killing the dragons, because that's what we have on the server. We have 1,000 people that want to do the content. And so I'm more in favor of including, like, every week we could have, even every week if we rotated like CT, Nagy, and Box, one of them is going to be an open raid that everything does. Something like that even. I would be ready to jump at the bit for that one, saying, hey, if you guys want to kill CT or Nagy or Box every week, every guild can get together and kill it together. Sure. But that's inclusive and not exclusive. That's kind of I'm happy to take this conversation more, but I've got 60 people waiting for me to start a fear clear.
Hey, it's Mendon. Let me say,
that line was more of a conversation than just reading the first line of the proposal and saying we'll leave the UN if it happens. That's more what I would want to hear than just first line of proposal. Nope, we'll leave the.
So what did Mendon have to say?
Yeah, I want to hear.
Yeah, Mendon has to say. I was a little disappointed to hear SEAL teams say that there's no wiggle room in there, but I will tell you guys, if UN falls apart, it's gonna be really awful. I've seen blue rating, and it's not. I've seen it in its worst, and it wasn't great. And you guys are just going to be KSing each other and training each other, training other players, and half the server will be suspended, and staff will be pissed off at everyone. So it's in your best interest to work together, SEAL team included. If you guys as a whole decide to do rotations of some sort, I highly encourage SEAL team to work something out, maybe tiered base, but. Me personally, I'm not a huge fan of rotations with such little content because people won't say it. I like their approach on including as many people as possible. If I could, Rogan won't let me server enforce a lot of raid rules right now. Won't let anyone do it. So we can't push it, but you guys are doing a great job working together, and it's been pretty civil, and I appreciate it.
Sorry, I spoke over you.
In response to that, I'm totally in favor of discussing it further, kind of try to find some middle ground. I think Fates, I think your second response was great. So let's continue the conversation, right?
Yeah, I would be happy to continue it.
Yeah, I know you need to run.
Too. I really need to go because they've been waiting for me for.
Do your thing.
Good luck.
I appreciate you guys. Thank you for the meeting.
Thanks.
Evening.
I mean, I would still like to try to set a time frame for for it to get resolved, or to to go off of I guess what Menden said. So I guess to figure that out, um, how we can come up with some type of resolution, and regardless if it's not a rotation, if it's something that can be agreed on and make it better for the server in the long run. I mean, at the end of the day, I'll be honest, like, there's no way that we as Venerate as a guild could ever compete against Ill Team, and that's just the truth. And I'm not, there's no other fluff to that, so I'm not really sure what to do at this point, other than to try to come up with a better solution to what's in place now.
I think they told us exactly what they thought of the real player agreements. As long as they're leading them, they're fine. But if it goes against what they want to do, which is kill every dragon because they have so many people, the only response that they would respect is somebody who can take it from them.
Yeah, I got that.
And then Menden basically said he can't enforce any rules yet, but he sees the end result of this falling apart being us fighting and bickering over it like we have been, but only getting worse, where we start training each other and involving the staff and everything.
So I guess we wait until next week until another shit show happens and go from there.
Yeah, I guess so.
Well, I mean,
rather have a little more proactive approach. We can maybe meet before then with the guilds that actually want to do the rotation.
Yeah, I think we need to meet and decide what our fallback. So if their eventual fallback position is cut and dried, if we want to ever get the content that they currently have on lockdown, because they can field 70 people. I don't. I know they said they were the small guys, but they weren't the small guys.
Yeah, they had 65. Yeah.
Yeah, I did our numbers. We weren't pushing their number. We weren't beating them with all three of us. So.
Oh no, we were. No, there's no question. The NAFTA coalition, that was just a trial that didn't honestly work out that well, but we thought we'd try it. Had the most people by far. Sure, we wouldn't put together. We had like 100.
You mean between Black Lotus, Venerate, and Lineage?
Yeah, which is what he was comparing it to. But obviously, he had way more people than Kingdom did at that encounter.
I think even then it was pretty close, because I think it was like Black Lotus 17.
No, Black Lotus had over 30. I think we had about 30. No, our combined raid was in the ballpark of 100. I think at least 80. It was really big. It doesn't matter. Clearly, it wasn't what it needed to be.
Yeah.
It was an experiment. It was interesting.
Here's the thing is, I'm going to just tell you this. I feel like we had a very amicable relationship with them, and this is going to be a heavy expense probably for Kingdom. But I really do appreciate everyone kind of taking this journey with me, figuring out the middle ground for all our different groups and all our players and so on. I wish Ben could hear this, and I'm really glad that he made that statement. But we want to play it the same way they want to play it, right? But we just don't like what's going on with the aftermath. Can we do better? That's the whole thing.
So the other thing that we can do is we can decide exactly what we want a proposal to be, and we can ask Fates for his input, and we can just all sign it and ask Rogine if he wants to. I mean, fuck, I don't know.
I mean, to look at the other end of the coin here. So what does that mean if they leave UN?
I mean, it'd be bad, like Menden said. I think that if we want to push the rotation, then I think we need to make sure we do everything we can to find common ground. And if we're doing everything possible to meet halfway, and there's no budging on the other side, then you just go forward with it, and you hope that the people that run the server appreciate that. Because this is not entirely different from what server staff forced on Blue at one point. So I don't know.
Yeah, I guess it just sucks. There's such a large collective of other players, and now it's I guess it's just an awkward situation, and I just feel like if it continues to go down this path, then there will be no server. It will just be a not a green deal. It would just be like a SEAL team server. Because I don't think that. I don't know how long my guys can hold up with sitting at a camp for 12 or 14 hours and having to go through these rules and jump through it, and then maybe someone screws up, and then what are we doing? Forfeiting loot? I don't know. Getting raid banned.
I do have one request. So I thought it was good to hear that SEAL Team has closed recruitment, because I kind of felt like there might have been an element of SEAL Teams absorbing all the raiders so that nobody else can have any. So if that really is true and they're not picking up all of our raiders anymore, that'd be nice. And if they are still doing that, I think it'd be worth mentioning that to them at the next meeting.
Yeah, I don't think that statement is true, because I've had guys that have been approached, and maybe not in a formal officer way, but like, hey, like, come join us so you could kill dragons instead of being in your shit, whatever.
I took recruiting is closed to mean that they're not accepting applications. Was what I assumed that he meant. Anyway, but I was just going to say, like, if you have, it's happened to a bunch of guilds, a huge chunk of your people, just cut and go to a SEAL team, I would be ready to say that to Faith. It's like, your guild is so big already, and you're so concerned about, one of your arguments is you have so many people waiting for loot. Well, what do you think?
Right.
That's because I just feel like a guild is getting so big. At a certain point, it ends up being so big that it has to have all the loot, or it can't sustain itself. Maybe it just shouldn't have got that big in the first place. Like, I figured if we set up a rotation like this, it would make sense for SEAL Team to split into like two separate guilds that compete with each other. That would seem like an appropriate number of people in one guild, right? I don't know.
Yeah, I agree. Grendel, you had something you want to say?
Yeah, I think as soon as they lose a dragon, they'll just open up their recruitment again. Fates came from Aftermath on Blue. They used to have 120 to 130 people at their raids. So I can just see it continuing to get bigger and bigger and bigger as they need.
I agree. This is one eye from Kingdom, and I think one thing that we learned is that there are proposals that, if passed, SEAL Team will leave the UN, and this is probably not the only one. So I think we should at least discuss in the future, maybe in this next week, what does it look like if they leave, and what would our response be? Because we could concede this point to them now, and later down the road, we want something even more, and they again draw a line in the sand.
That's what I was trying to get at with the whole
voting.
That's the whole thing I was trying to get at. What's the point of the UN if you're just going to leave if it doesn't mold to what?
Yeah, it creates a system by only their vote counts.
And it's been a lot of that, to where they've written a rule either before or after the fact that has in some way benefited or kind of it changed the way that they did something. So like, I think there were 2 or 3 that was just it was saying that, okay, well, we should make this a rule because it happened, and it was more in our favor than anyone else's.
This is Ortopus from Kingdom. If they want to talk about inclusion, then let's make the rule every single weekend, every dragon is open for everybody.
Yeah, that's what I thought about, right? Like, as an economist, you always want to look at the extreme examples, and that's.
And then flood
about
it. Flood the
inclusion, how
first
about
one.
every single one is always an open raid?
And flood the
something tells
first
me
one.
that's not going anywhere either.
Well, what's really disappointing about this is really a server-made problem by Rogan and the devs, and they want no part in actually fixing it. They want a player agreement, but this is classic. 20 years after everybody's learned all the tricks, they're not making it a more positive experience.
I mean, to me, if they refuse to even consider this, then I think, yeah, what we should bring up is every weekend is an open draft, and we roll it just like we've done, with these other fear raids, where everybody rolls from their guild, and it's going to be chaos, and they're going to hate it, and their members are going to hate it. But you know what? They said they wanted to include, so they want to include. Let's include.
And flood it every week. Everybody show up. That way, like when it gets down to it, they'll be begging to have the freaking.
600 people at the zone.
They'll make
But
sure
I mean,
they only
like, what else is there?
Yeah, that's when
hold it
all the
down.
training
C-rate.
and all that kind of stuff starts.
I take it SEAL team gave us the big fuck you. I had to step outside for a second.
They basically said, if this gets voted in, we'll leave the UN. I think the tone changed a little bit after Menden made a comment, but we'll see.
But he softened his comment by
was that?
saying he has no power.
He said that he can't dictate. He didn't say he has no power.
He said that they're not allowed to enforce the raid rules.
Interesting.
But that doesn't mean that he has no influence or input.
But he's disappointed in SEAL Team.
Yeah, his input was, don't make more work for us.
I mean, that document that was created was about as fair as it's going to get.
Well, I mean, if they want to change things about it, that could happen. I mean, whatever. It didn't even include any kind of breakdown for how many mobs there would be.
He read the first line, C-Ray, and said, like, basically read the first line of the proposals and said, we will never vote in favor. We'll leave the UN if this is it.
Yeah, and what was most important to me is that we had a commitment from them on that they would abide by rules voted by the UN. This came up and they're like, no, we're going to get out. And then they said something that made no sense. They said, well, it's unfair for our members to not get the dragon kills because we have so many people that need it. And it's like, well, what about the rest of us? We're literally just saying you should have to share. And they're going, no, we shouldn't. And that's what's fair. And I don't know how that's fair.
Man-child mentality.
He literally brought up how many people in his guild had to get an amulet of
Yeah, how many want they want AON, yeah.
And he quantified that with a number.
Yes.
And said it would take 2 years for them to get it.
That's awesome.
So kind of implying that they need all the CTs for 2 years, yeah.
All my guys need an AON.
And that he would never give up Nagy because it had a sword drop that every tank in his guild had to have.
Blade Stopper, yeah.
Blade Stopper, yeah. That sounds... Which, yeah, tanks do need those, but...
Nobody
does every other
needs it.
tank.
They want it.
It's a helpful tool. You can certainly win without one.
But what I heard out of all this was that the most important part was the rest of us will never have access to high-end raid content as long as they're in control. And they won't cede control of anything.
Yeah.
And I know a lot of things I said probably didn't make sense, but again, I'm not sure what to do. Like, we can try our hardest every week to compete, but at some point, when do you get to that stopping point to where you're not waiting around for 12 hours for nothing? And I'm not sure like how to continue to progress that without, instead of going through and recruiting every single person that I see, and I don't have a solution right now.
Well, they told us the solution.
To fuck off.
Well, they to me they literally said, you know, they're the biggest, baddest, and until someone's bigger and badder, they're gonna win.
So there's something that we could vote on. Doesn't need to be tonight, but it is a sort of a shot across the bow, but not as severe as our first proposal, and that is to make every dragon open.
Yeah, I mean, what's to stop us from just teaming up and then against every
No, but
dragon?
we shouldn't team up. They wanted inclusion. We include everybody. Them, anybody on the server. You want to come to a dragon? Come. And we'll see how long it lasts before they're asking for a rotation.
Yeah, I suppose.
I mean,
That's
we
what
all
I
heard them.
think, and I think
That's
it
what they
needs
said.
to
They
be.
don't want to. Sorry, go ahead.
It doesn't just need to be. Let's do it this way. It needs to be. Let's do it this way, and everybody shows. Everybody rolls 600 rolls on one item.
To kind of go down another path and going into the blue era, if it gets bad enough to where they are forced to implement a CCR or something along those lines, is it better? I mean, wouldn't that technically be better than the current situation? I mean, it was a shit show up until that point, but I think once they were forced to implement certain rules because there were none, at least there were guidelines to follow or having something in place. And you know, again, I didn't play blue, but
What was the CCR? I didn't play much blue either.
it was like a rotation based on your size, where of course like your larger SEAL teams would have maybe the majority or of the content or something, but still allow your smaller micro guilds to have their fair shot in some type of rotation, in maybe an uncontested fashion, to where you can play and you can practice and you can learn instead of like trying to focus on getting FTE and all these other things. From what I understand. Maybe someone just go post on the forums that we'll open open invites to the server these next few weeks.
I mean, what could they say to that? Like, yeah, if somebody posted on the forums, we're hosting an open nagging Vox this weekend, and then start doing it every weekend, what are they going to say? It's going to turn to them just trying to KS the raid. It's going to be madness, but it's what they wanted. Word.
Was there a suggestion? Why not? Let's give that tactic a shot.
You guys might have to be prepared for blowback of this. There's a strong chance that the fear rotation will get fucked, or any of our rotations.
Do we get to go have fun and compete again on every single mob?
Petition everything that goes through.
In all honesty, I don't think they would be that would be really silly of them to do if they would do that, right?
Yeah, it'll suck just as much for them as it will for us.
That'd be in violation of the UN agreement. I mean, if they're gonna leave, then they're gonna.
I think that Nuggy's the most neutral, like regarding the entire situation. I mean, is there anything that you can suggest that they would be more open to, so it doesn't get to any point of what we're already discussing?
As far as everything falling apart, like
Yeah, and going through the petition process, and making it to where we're forcing certain rules implemented. And again, that's not. I'm not saying force a rotation, more force like some type of agreement collectively with the server, and they don't want to be a part of that specific agreement. But what is it that can be done to find that middle ground of not leading to that path of we this is what we need, otherwise we're gonna leave.
Okay, so Fates has a section of his guild that wants to compete, and that's what they live and die for, right? Like, they have nothing better in life to do other than to compete on a 20-year-old video game. And I cringe at video game because it's a computer game, all that. But and he's doing the best he can to manage those personalities, and I think he's done an amazing job so far. And I think that to continue to do so, he has to give them some avenue of competition. Now, I think this was probably too far in the direction that he didn't want to go. I think there's still probably some kind of agreement we can come to that'll get more inclusion for the rest of the raiding guilds. I just think that this was probably too much for him to handle all at once. Yeah, that's kind of my synopsis of his reaction.
That's fair. He also could have just said, "Let me read it, and I'll get back."
Well, yeah, he did kind of have a knee-jerk reaction after reading the first sentence, right? And we didn't put in there that the time frame was negotiable. It was just highlighted or bolded, which maybe turned him off. So that's maybe something we can bring up in the future if when we talk about this again. That and he was his back was up against a wall as far as time, because he did have that raid waiting on him, and they'd been sitting there for probably, I don't know, 45 minutes. I don't know why someone else couldn't have led the raid, but it is what it is.
They're wanting to do some practices with Fear tonight, is my understanding.
Right. But as a leader, you want to make yourself redundant, right? So have someone that can fill in your shoes when you're not available.
I don't disagree. I'm just that's why they're waiting to get all their leadership out of here.
Yeah, right.
And I think he did. I think he just didn't want to be part of the conversation. And again, I have good communication with Fates, and I don't have anything against him. But I know that he usually has Smash, or he has a lot of other raid leaders where he actually does not include himself for those particular reasons. And maybe there is something special going on tonight, but maybe he, in some ways, he was avoiding that having to dig deeper into that.
Yeah, I think he just needs to chew on it for a bit. This ain't really a bad thing. We kind of sideswiped him with it anyway.
Well, he did get kind of blindsided by this, which I was expecting, and he wasn't happy about it, which was predictable. But so maybe we just give it time to percolate, and give them time to kind of talk it over and see what they can tweak to maybe make their members happier. I would expect some pretty major changes, but that's just something we'll just have to go back and forth on for a little while. But I'm very much in, whoever was saying, it's very onerous on their time being in the UN and all that. I'm very much in the same boat. Like, my wife moved out of state, so I have all kinds of time, and this is still taking up way too much of my time.
Yeah, I agree.
Dude, you have no fucking idea. I'm scared to go home.
Okay, guys, I'm gonna go see my wife because she's still working outside. Later.
See you later.
Good meeting, guys. See you guys.
See you soon.
I gotta go make these arms of mine bigger. 20 inches ain't enough.
Gains.